Amara woke up to the sweet sound of laughter. Chinedu and Ada were playing in the living room, their giggles filling the house with joy. Daniel walked in with a wide smile, lifting the children high as they squealed in delight. Amara's heart swelled with love as she watched her happy family. Dinner time was always special. They prayed together, holding hands tightly. Daniel's voice was firm yet gentle as he thanked God for their blessings. They shared stories, laughing at Chinedu's funny jokes and Ada's dramatic tales from school. Amara felt blessed. After dinner, Daniel helped the children with their homework while Amara cleaned the kitchen. She watched him patiently explain math problems, his eyes full of love and pride. Her heart danced with joy, knowing she married a man who loved his family deeply. As night fell, Amara and Daniel sat on the porch, watching the stars. "I'm the luckiest man alive," Daniel whispered, holding Amara close. She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder, feeling safe and loved. But unknown to them, darkness was slowly creeping in, ready to shake their happy home. Things started to change subtly. Daniel became distant, his laughter fading away. He started coming home late, eyes tired and face drawn. Amara tried to understand but received vague excuses about work. She prayed silently, hoping it was just a busy season. One evening, Daniel came home late again, barely acknowledging her. He ate dinner quietly, avoiding eye contact. Amara's heart sank. She missed his jokes, his gentle touch, his warm smile. She felt a coldness she couldn't explain. The children noticed too. Chinedu asked, "Mom, why doesn't Daddy play with us anymore?" Amara forced a smile, saying, "Daddy is just tired from work." But deep down, she was worried. Her once loving husband was slipping away, and she didn't know how to reach him. At night, Amara cried softly, praying for her family. She asked God to bring back her loving husband, to restore the joy in their home. Little did she know, the darkness had already taken root, and her battle was just beginning. Cynthia watched Daniel from a distance, her eyes gleaming with wicked intent. She admired his charm, his confidence, and most of all, his love for his family. It made her furious. She wanted him, and she was ready to destroy anyone standing in her way. She started appearing at his workplace, pretending to need help with projects. Her laughter was sweet, her eyes flirtatious. Daniel, unaware of her intentions, thought she was simply friendly. But Cynthia was weaving her web, slowly pulling him closer. She sent sweet messages, complimented him endlessly, and made him feel special. Daniel began to enjoy her attention, feeling flattered and important. He didn't realize he was being lured into a trap. Cynthia was cunning. She played innocent, hiding her wickedness behind a charming smile. She studied Daniel's routine, learning his likes and dislikes. She was determined to steal him away from Amara, no matter the cost. With each passing day, Cynthia's grip on Daniel grew stronger, her wicked plan unfolding perfectly. She was ready to destroy Amara's happiness, and nothing was going to stop her. Daniel became a stranger in his own home. He stopped smiling, stopped playing with the children. His phone never left his hand, his eyes glued to the screen, his face lighting up with each message from Cynthia. Amara felt the distance growing. She tried to reach out, asking gently, "Is everything okay?" Daniel brushed her off, his voice cold and distant. "I'm fine. Just busy." He barely looked at her, his mind elsewhere. Dinner time became silent. Daniel ate quickly, avoiding conversation. The children sensed the tension, their laughter fading. Ada asked innocently, "Daddy, do you still love us?" Daniel's face softened for a moment, but he didn't answer. He simply stood up and walked away. Amara's heart shattered. She could feel her family slipping away, and she was powerless to stop it. She cried herself to sleep, praying for God's help. But the darkness continued to grow, tightening its grip on Daniel's heart. Amara didn't know that Cynthia was behind it all, weaving her wicked spell to tear her family apart. Daniel found himself tangled in Cynthia's web of lies. She made him feel special, feeding his ego and telling him what he wanted to hear. He believed her words, falling deeper into her trap. Cynthia began planting seeds of doubt in his mind. "Your wife doesn't appreciate you," she whispered, her eyes full of fake concern. "She takes you for granted." Daniel believed her, his love for Amara turning into bitterness. He became easily irritated, snapping at Amara for the smallest things. He accused her of being careless, lazy, and ungrateful. Amara was confused, hurt by his harsh words. She tried to explain herself, but Daniel refused to listen. Cynthia's plan was working perfectly. She watched from the shadows, pleased as Daniel grew more distant from his family. She felt powerful, knowing she controlled his heart and mind. Amara felt helpless, watching her husband turn into someone she didn't recognize. She cried silently, wondering what she did wrong. But this was just the beginning of her sorrow. Cynthia's wickedness knew no bounds, and she wasn't done destroying Amara's happiness. Cynthia smiled wickedly as she watched her plan unfold. She knew she needed to tighten her grip on Daniel. One evening, she called him, her voice shaking with fake tears. "Daniel, I have something to tell you. I'm pregnant." Daniel was stunned. He dropped his phone, his heart pounding. "Pregnant? How? Are you sure?" Cynthia sobbed convincingly. "Yes, I'm sure. It's your baby, Daniel." She knew this would keep him close, make him feel responsible. Daniel's world turned upside down. He felt trapped and confused. Guilt flooded his heart as he thought about Amara and the children. But Cynthia's fake cries kept echoing in his mind. He believed her every word. Amara noticed Daniel's worry but didn't know the reason. She tried to comfort him, but he pushed her away, blaming her for his stress. Her heart broke as he shouted, "Just leave me alone." Cynthia laughed secretly, pleased with herself. She was winning. She had Daniel exactly where she wanted him, lost, confused, and under her control. But she didn't know that her lies would soon come back to haunt her. Daniel's behavior grew worse. He became angry and impatient, shouting at Amara and the children for no reason. He stopped praying with them and stayed out late, avoiding his family. Chinedu and Ada were scared of their father's anger. They didn't understand why Daddy was always upset. Amara tried to protect them, hugging them tightly as Daniel's harsh words filled the house. Her heart ached for her children. One evening, Daniel came home late and drunk. He threw his bag on the floor, breaking a vase. Amara rushed to pick up the pieces, tears filling her eyes. "Why are you like this?" she asked softly. Daniel's face twisted with anger. "You're the reason my life is miserable," he shouted. His words were like knives, cutting deep into Amara's heart. She felt broken, watching the man she loved become a stranger. Amara cried all night, hugging her children as they slept. She prayed silently, asking God to save her husband and bring back the joy in their home. But the darkness was growing stronger, feeding on their pain. Amara couldn't take it anymore. She needed answers. She went to Daniel's workplace, hoping to understand why he had changed. As she arrived, she saw him laughing with Cynthia, his eyes sparkling with joy. Her heart sank. Cynthia noticed Amara and pretended to be kind. "Oh, hi Amara. You look tired. Is everything okay at home?" Her words were sweet, but her eyes were cold and mocking. Amara forced a smile, her heart breaking inside. Daniel was cold and distant. "Why are you here?" he asked sharply. Amara's voice trembled. "I was worried, you don't come home early anymore." But Daniel brushed her off. "I'm busy. Stop bothering me." Amara felt humiliated as Cynthia watched with a wicked smile. She understood now, Cynthia was the reason Daniel had changed. Her heart was shattered, realizing her husband was having an affair. Amara walked home in tears, feeling lost and alone. She prayed through her pain, asking God to help her forgive and find a way to save her marriage. But her battle had just begun. Amara locked herself in her room and fell to her knees, crying out to God. "Father, help me. I don't understand what's happening. Save my husband. Save my home." Her tears flowed freely as she prayed with all her heart. She fasted and prayed every day, asking God to break any evil power holding her husband. She read her Bible, finding strength in God's promises. "The Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear?" she whispered, holding on to her faith. Chinedu and Ada noticed their mother's pain. They hugged her tightly, saying, "Mommy, don't cry. Daddy will come back to us." Their innocent words gave Amara hope. She smiled through her tears, feeling God's love through her children. Amara didn't stop praying. She gathered women from her church, asking them to join her in prayer. They held hands, praying for Daniel's deliverance, believing that God would answer them. Unknown to Amara, her prayers were shaking the spiritual realm, weakening the dark power controlling Daniel. The battle had begun, and God's light was breaking through the darkness. One night, after hours of intense prayer, Amara fell into a deep sleep. She dreamed of a dark shadow hovering over Daniel. It was ugly and terrifying, whispering lies into his ears. Daniel's eyes were cold and empty, his face expressionless. Amara tried to call his name, but he didn't hear her. She saw Cynthia standing behind the shadow, laughing wickedly. Her eyes were red, her face twisted with evil. "He belongs to me now," Cynthia hissed. "You can't save him." Amara screamed, reaching out to pull Daniel away, but her hands went through him. She cried helplessly as the shadow tightened its grip around him, wrapping him in darkness. Cynthia's laughter echoed, growing louder and more wicked. Suddenly, a bright light appeared, shining fiercely and chasing away the darkness. The shadow shrieked, melting under the light's power. Amara heard a voice say, "Fear not. I am with you." She woke up, her heart racing, her body covered in sweat. Amara knew the dream was a warning. She needed to fight harder, to pray even more. The battle was real, and her family's fate was at stake. The next morning, Amara went to her pastor, shaking with fear. She told him about her dream, her voice trembling. "Pastor, there was a shadow, and Cynthia, she was controlling Daniel." The pastor listened carefully, his face serious. He took Amara's hands and prayed, asking God for wisdom and protection. After praying, he looked at her and said, "Cynthia is using dark powers to control your husband. This is spiritual warfare." Amara's heart pounded. "What should I do?" she asked, her voice breaking. The pastor spoke firmly, "You must pray without ceasing. Fast and pray. This battle is not against flesh and blood but against dark spirits." Amara felt fear grip her heart, but the pastor's words gave her courage. God is greater than any evil. Have faith, Amara. Keep praying, and God will fight for you, he assured her. The pastor gathered prayer warriors from the church. Together, they prayed for Daniel's deliverance, calling on God's power to break any evil spell. Amara felt God's presence as they prayed, her faith growing stronger. The battle was fierce, but Amara was ready to fight with prayer and faith. She knew God was on her side. Amara began fasting, waking up every midnight to pray. She cried out to God, pleading for Daniel's freedom from the evil power holding him. Her voice echoed through the house as she declared, "No weapon formed against my family shall prosper." She grew stronger in her faith, refusing to give up. She prayed with boldness, calling on God to break every curse and spell. The church women joined her, fasting and praying, creating a powerful wall of prayer around her family. Cynthia felt the power of Amara's prayers. She grew restless, her spells losing strength. Daniel began to feel uneasy, his headaches growing worse. He couldn't understand why he was always angry or why he was drawn to Cynthia against his will. Amara didn't stop. She prayed over Daniel's clothes, his food, and his bed. She anointed his pillow with oil, declaring freedom and peace over his life. Her faith grew stronger as she watched God's power at work. The darkness began to shake, unable to withstand the light of Amara's prayers. The battle was far from over, but Amara was ready to fight until her family was free. Cynthia felt her power slipping away. Her spells were weakening, her control over Daniel fading. She tried to renew the curse, chanting wicked words, but it wasn't working. Amara's prayers were too strong. She became desperate, visiting her wicked master who gave her the powers. Amara is praying too much. I'm losing Daniel, she cried. The master's eyes grew cold. Then fight harder. Destroy Amara before she destroys you. Cynthia's heart raced with fear. She knew she had to act fast. She planned to scare Amara, to break her spirit and stop her prayers. She sent evil nightmares, hoping to terrify Amara into giving up. But Amara stood firm. Each night, she rebuked the nightmares, declaring victory in Jesus' name. The evil spirits shrieked, fleeing from her bold prayers. Cynthia grew furious, realizing Amara's faith was too strong. Cynthia's plans were failing, and she could feel darkness turning against her. She was losing the battle, but she wasn't ready to give up. She decided to attack harder, hoping to break Amara's faith. Cynthia sent a fierce spiritual attack, determined to destroy Amara's hope. In the middle of the night, Amara heard loud banging on her door. Shadows danced on the walls, whispering wicked words. Chinedu and Ada screamed, terrified by the strange noises. Amara's heart raced, but she refused to be afraid. She grabbed her Bible, opening to Psalm 91. Her voice was firm as she read aloud, "He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty." The shadows shrieked, clawing at the walls, but they couldn't touch Amara or her children. The power of God's word surrounded them, creating a shield of light. The shadows fled, unable to stand the light. Amara hugged her children tightly, comforting them with prayers. "Don't be afraid, my loves. God is with us. Nothing can harm us," she whispered, her voice calm and strong. Cynthia screamed in anger, realizing her attack failed. She felt a cold chill as darkness began to turn against her. Amara's faith was stronger than she expected, and she was running out of time. Daniel began to change. The headaches became unbearable, his heart racing with fear and confusion. He saw strange visions of Cynthia, her face twisted with wickedness. He heard voices telling him to hurt Amara, but he fought against them. One night, he dreamt of a bright light breaking through thick darkness. He saw Amara praying, surrounded by angels. The light grew stronger, chasing away the darkness. Daniel fell to his knees, crying out, "God, help me. I don't want to be this monster." He woke up drenched in sweat, his heart pounding. He felt something breaking inside him, a heavy weight lifting off his shoulders. His mind cleared, and he remembered everything: Cynthia's lies, his wicked behavior, and the pain he caused his family. Tears filled his eyes as guilt flooded his heart. He couldn't believe how blind he was, how he fell for Cynthia's tricks. He felt ashamed, remembering how he hurt Amara and the children. He wanted to run back to them, to beg for forgiveness. But he was still weak, and Cynthia wasn't ready to let him go. She tightened her grip, fighting to keep him under her control. The battle for Daniel's soul was far from over. Cynthia felt Daniel slipping away. She grew desperate, her heart pounding with fear. She couldn't lose him, not after everything she did to get him. She chanted dark spells, trying to tighten her hold on him. But Daniel was stronger now. Amara's prayers were breaking the chains around his heart. He felt disgusted by Cynthia's touch, her words making him sick. He saw her for who she really was, a wicked liar and homebreaker. Cynthia cried, begging him to stay. "Don't leave me. I'm carrying your child." But Daniel's eyes were cold. "You lied to me. I don't believe anything you say anymore." Her spell was broken, and her lies were powerless. In a last attempt to keep him, Cynthia threatened, "If you leave me, I will destroy your family." Daniel's heart raced with fear, but he remembered the light from his dream. He stood firm, saying, "You have no power over me. God is stronger than your evil." Cynthia screamed, her eyes flashing red. She tried to attack him, but an invisible shield protected him. She felt the darkness turning against her, her own spells backfiring. She realized she was losing, and it terrified her. Daniel ran home, his heart racing with guilt and shame. He burst through the door, falling to his knees before Amara. "I'm sorry. I was blind. Please forgive me," he cried, his voice broken with regret. Amara's heart ached, tears streaming down her face. She wanted to be angry, to shout at him for all the pain he caused. But her love was stronger than her anger. She knelt beside him, hugging him tightly. "I forgive you," she whispered. Chinedu and Ada ran to their father, hugging him with joy. "Daddy, you're back. We missed you." Daniel wept, holding his children close, his heart breaking with love and regret. He realized how much he lost, how much he hurt the people who loved him most. Amara prayed over him, thanking God for bringing him back. She knew it was God's mercy that saved her husband. She prayed for healing, for strength, and for their love to grow even stronger. But the battle wasn't over. Cynthia's threat hung over them, a dark shadow waiting to strike. Amara knew she had to keep praying, to protect her family from the darkness still lurking. Cynthia was furious. She refused to lose. She gathered all her dark powers, chanting wicked spells to destroy Amara's home once and for all. Her eyes glowed red as she summoned a powerful demon to attack Daniel and his family. Amara woke up in the middle of the night, feeling a dark presence in her home. Shadows danced on the walls, whispering wicked words. She heard Cynthia's voice laughing cruelly, "You can't win, Amara. I'll destroy everything you love." But Amara was ready. She stood firm, holding her Bible tightly. "The Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear?" she declared, her voice steady and strong. The shadows shrieked, growing weaker as her words filled the house with light. She called Daniel and the children to pray with her. They held hands, praying in unity. "No weapon formed against us shall prosper," they shouted, their voices echoing through the house. The light grew brighter, pushing back the darkness. Cynthia screamed in anger as her powers crumbled. The demon she summoned turned against her, furious that she failed. Cynthia was terrified, realizing that her own evil was coming back to haunt her. Amara continued praying with boldness, her faith unshakable. She remembered her pastor's words, "God is stronger than any evil." She called on God's power to break every curse and set her family free. Suddenly, a bright light filled the room, blinding the shadows. Angels appeared, their swords shining with heavenly fire. They fought against the demon, striking it down with powerful blows. The demon shrieked, defeated by God's warriors. The dark cloud over Daniel vanished, and his face softened. He felt a heavy weight lift off his shoulders, his heart filling with peace. He held Amara's hands, his eyes full of love and gratitude. "Thank you for not giving up on me," he whispered. Amara smiled, tears of joy streaming down her face. "God saved us," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. They hugged tightly, feeling God's love surround them. Their family was finally free from the darkness. Meanwhile, Cynthia's spells backfired on her. The evil she summoned consumed her, leaving her powerless and broken. She lost everything, her wickedness exposed for all to see. Her lies were uncovered, and she faced the shame of her actions. With the darkness defeated, Amara and Daniel rebuilt their marriage. They prayed together every day, thanking God for delivering them from the claws of evil. Their love grew stronger, their hearts filled with faith and gratitude. Daniel became a new man. He loved Amara even more, cherishing her strength and faith. He became a better father, playing with Chinedu and Ada, filling their home with laughter and joy once more. They forgave Cynthia, choosing to let go of the hurt and pain. "We will not carry bitterness in our hearts," Amara said. They prayed for her, asking God to change her wicked heart. Cynthia was ashamed and defeated. She left town, losing her child as her evil curse backfired on her. She wandered alone, broken and lost, haunted by her own wickedness. She learned that evil never wins. Amara and Daniel continued to grow in faith, teaching their children about God's love and protection. They became closer as a family, praying and laughing together, their home filled with peace and happiness. They stood together, looking at the sunset, their hearts full of hope. Amara held Daniel's hand, whispering, "God is faithful." Daniel smiled, squeezing her hand tightly. "Yes, he is. And with him, nothing can break us."